Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we are opening up a file that I think a lot of people think they know, but once you actually start digging into the primary sources, the biography, the court records, you realize the public perception is really just a caricature.
It really is.
We are looking at a figure who is, well, arguably one of the most polarizing men in music history. He's the engine room of the biggest heavy metal band on earth, but he's also a knight, a multi-millionaire art collector, and a failed tennis prodigy.
It's a very strange resume, isn't it? Usually when we talk about metal icons, we're talking about people who came from, broken homes or the streets or absolute obscurity. The narrative is almost always escape.
Right, escape from something.
But today we're looking at someone who didn't need to escape anything. He ran towards the chaos. We are, of course, talking about Lars Ulrich of Metallica.
The one and only. And I want to set the stage for you here because the stack of research we have for this deep dive is massive. We have biographical records from Denmark in the 60s. We have technical breakdowns of his drumming evolution from the 80s to the 2020s. And we have the legal transcripts, which are fascinating, from the Napster era.
Oh, they're incredible.
So our mission today is to figure out how a kid from a wealthy suburb in Copenhagen became the face of American heavy metal.
And not just the face, but the architect. I think that's the distinction we need to make early on. There are drummers who just hit things, and then there's Lars Ulrich. You can criticize his timing, you can criticize his personality, but you absolutely cannot criticize his ability to manifest a vision.
A vision and a band.
This is a guy who willed a genre into existence through sheer hustle, pure force of will.
Well, let's go back to where that will was forged, because it wasn't in some garage in California. It was in Gentofte, Denmark, December 26, 1963. The sources paint a picture that is very, let's say, continental. This wasn't a blue-collar upbringing.
Far from it. This is one of the most interesting parts of the whole Ulrich mythology. He was born into the cultural elite. His father, Torben Ulrich, and his grandfather, Einar Ulrich, were both professional tennis players. And in Denmark, the Ulrich name meant something.
It was a legacy.
It meant excellence. It meant discipline. But Torben, the dad, was this incredible character. He wasn't just a jock, not at all. He was a jazz writer, a musician, a filmmaker, a Buddhist. He had this very bohemian, very philosophical approach to life.
I was reading about the environment in the house. It wasn't just tennis rackets on the wall. His godfather was Dexter Gordon, the legendary jazz saxophonist.
Which is absurd, right? I mean, think about that. Most kids have a godfather who sends them a card and $5 on their birthday.
Or teaches them how to change a tire.
Yeah, exactly. Lars had a titan of jazz just, hanging out in the living room. And he was childhood friends with Nina Cherry. So you have this very comfortable upper middle class safety, but inside the house it's just full of high art, jazz, and intellectualism.
So it's this weird mix of extreme physical discipline from the tennis side and this completely free, artistic, bohemian side from his dad's other interests.
A total contradiction. But the expectation was clear. You are an Ulrich, therefore you play tennis. That was the path laid out for him.
And Lars was good. The stats here say he was ranked in the top 10 for his age group in Denmark. That isn't a hobby, that's a career track.
It's a job. When you're 10, 11 years old and you're ranked nationally, your life is structured. You're training every day, you're traveling to tournaments on weekends, you're analyzing your grip, your backhand. He was being groomed to be the third generation of Ulrich tennis stars.
And by all accounts, he bought into it. He wasn't rebelling against it at that age.
No, he wanted to be his dad. He idolized him. He wanted to play center court at Wimbledon. That was the dream, the family dream.
So where does the corruption happen? When does the metal virus enter this very pristine, very controlled system?
February 1973. This is the year zero moment, the absolute turning point in his entire life.
The epiphany.
Exactly. Lars is 9 years old. His dad, Torben, is playing in a tennis tournament in Copenhagen at a big stadium. And playing in that same stadium complex that same night is Deep Purple.
Now, for anyone listening who maybe doesn't realize the scale of this Deep Purple in 1973 isn't just a rock band. They are the loudest, most intense, most formidable thing on the planet.
They are absolute monsters.
Yeah.
This is the Machine Head era. This is Ritchie Blackmore on guitar, Ian Gillan on vocals. It is virtuoso chaos. Pure, unadulterated volume.
So the story goes that Torben gets 5 passes for his friends.
Right, for his journalist buddies. One friend bails in the last minute, and suddenly there's a spare ticket. Torben looks at 9-year-old Lars and says, "You want to go?"
And the research describes this moment as him being mesmerized But I imagine it was way more visceral than that. You're a polite Danish boy, you're used to the polite applause of a tennis match.
The whole quiet please atmosphere.
Exactly. And suddenly you walk into a wall of martial stacks. It must have been a physical assault.
Oh, it must have been terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. He saw Richie Blackmore smashing guitars, playing with his feet. The sheer volume of it, it just completely rewired his brain. He had never experienced anything so powerful.
And the effect was immediate.
The next day, literally the next morning, he goes to a record store and buys the album Fireball. And that's it. The seed is planted.
But he doesn't just quit tennis and start a band at 9. The two things run in parallel for a while.
They do. The tennis player is still walking around, going to practice, hitting backhands.
Yeah.
But internally, the musician has woken up. He starts obsessing over this music. And this is where we see the first sign of his enablers, his grandmother, Grandma Ulla.
Grandma Ulla, the unsung hero of heavy metal.
Absolutely. At age 12 or 13, she buys him this first drum kit, a Ludwig.
A Ludwig, the classic.
Now, you have to think about the noise. A drum kit in an apartment or a house is an act of aggression. It takes up space, it shakes the walls, it's an announcement. But the family allowed it. They indulged this hobby.
They thought it was a hobby.
They thought it was a phase, probably. A way for him to blow off steam from the pressures of tennis. They never imagined it would become his life.
Because in the summer of 1980, the family makes this massive move. They leave Denmark and relocate to Newport Beach, California. And the stated purpose of this move was not for Lars to start a band.
No, the entire reason they moved across the world was to turn Lars into a professional tennis player.
This is where the tragedy and the comedy of his life just collide perfectly. They moved to Newport Beach, which is the absolute epicenter of American tennis. It's sunny, it's wealthy, it's brutally competitive.
And Lars is 16.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a big deal because, he was top 10 in Denmark. He walks onto the court at Corona del Mar High School expecting to be the captain of the varsity team.
And this is the part of the story that I love because it's such a perfect humble pie moment. He doesn't just fail to make the varsity team. He doesn't make the team at all.
He gets cut completely. Yeah. Doesn't make the 7-man roster. He's not even a backup.
That has to be devastating. I mean, your entire family has uprooted their lives for this one specific goal, and you aren't even good enough for high school ball in California.
It's a complete identity crisis. You have to understand the context. Southern California in 1980 was churning out these athletic machines, tennis prodigies. Lars was a technique player, maybe a bit scrappy, but these California kids were just powerhouses. They were bigger, stronger, faster. He was completely outclassed.
So most kids would crumble, they'd retreat, they'd try to join the chess club or just sulk in their room for a year. But this is where we see the pivot, that famous Ulrich pivot. The rejection didn't break him, it clarified things.
It slammed a door shut. And in doing so, it opened the only other door he was interested in. If he had made that team, who knows? Maybe he gets a scholarship to a mid-tier university. Maybe he grinds out a living on the challenger circuit for a few years.
And we never get Metallica.
We never get Metallica.
Yeah.
But because he failed so spectacularly, so publicly, he looked at the tennis racket, looked at the drum kit, and said, okay, plan B is now plan A. There was no other choice.
So now he's 16, he's in Newport Beach, which, by the way, is not a metal town at all. It's all surfers and preppies.
Right, it's the OC, it's not the Sunset Strip.
And he is obsessed with a very specific sound that isn't really happening in America yet. He's all about the new wave of British heavy metal.
The NWOBHM, Iron Maiden, Saxon, Diamond Head, Tigers of Pantang. This was gritty, fast, punk-infused metal. In Los Angeles at the time, the big scene was glam. It was Mötley Crüe, Rat, Hairspray, spandex. Lars hated that stuff. He thought it was fake. He wanted the dirt. He wanted the speed.
And his obsession, this fanaticism as fuel point in our outline, is really illustrated by what he did in 1981. This is just incredible. He didn't just buy the records, he flew to London.
Think about that for a second. He's a teenager. She saves up some money, gets on a plane, and flies from San Francisco to London, effectively on a pilgrimage, for one reason: to see the band Diamond Head play at the Woolwich Odeon.
Did he even have a ticket? Or a place to stay?
No. That's the best part. He had nothing. He just showed up. He managed to talk his way backstage after the show, met the band, and basically fanboyed his way into sleeping on their floor.
He just willed himself into their inner circle.
He was relentless. He told them how much he loved their album, Lightning to the Nations. He knew all the songs. The band was so flattered by this kid who came all the way from America that they just sort of adopted him. He stayed with them for weeks.
So he wasn't just watching the show, he was getting a crash course in how to be in a band.
He was studying them. He was a spy. He was watching how they interacted, how they loaded their gear, how they traveled, how they wrote. He was taking mental notes the entire time. When he flew back to America, he wasn't just a fan anymore. He was a missionary. He had the gospel of this new sound, and he was determined to bring it to the U.S.
But a missionary needs a congregation. He needed a band, so he goes to the
legendary classifieds paper.
Yeah.
Before Craigslist, this was how you found anything in L.A. A used couch, a roommate, a lead guitarist. He places an ad.
And the wording of the ad is so specific. Drummer looking for other metal musicians to jam with. Tigers of Pantang, Diamond Head, Iron Maiden.
It was a dog whistle.
Yeah.
He was intentionally filtering out the glam rockers. If you didn't know who Diamond Head were, you were not invited. And a young man named James Hetfield responded.
The other half of the equation.
James Hetfield and his friend Hugh Tanner responded. They meet up in Downey. And honestly, the first meeting was not great. The sources say Lars wasn't actually that good at drumming yet. He had all the passion and the knowledge, but his timing was all over the place.
The cymbals were falling over.
Yeah, his kit was a mess. Hetfield was reportedly very unimpressed. He was a serious musician. And Lars just seemed like this enthusiastic, slightly goofy European kid. They jammed, and then James basically ghosted him.
But Lars had something Hetfield didn't. He had the hustle. And this is the story about the Metal Massacre compilation. This is pure, 100% Lars Ulrich.
This is his entire personality in one anecdote. He was friends with a guy named Brian Slagle, who was starting a little indie record label, Metal Blade Records. Slagle was putting together a compilation album of local LA metal bands called Metal Massacre.
And Lars just calls him up.
And says, "Hey, I've got this band, Metallica. We're amazing." Slagle's like, "Okay, cool." And Lars asks him, "Hey, if I put a band together, can I get a spot on the record?" He framed the question perfectly.
But he didn't have a band.
No band, no songs, not even a jam session planned. It was a complete hypothetical, and Slagle says, "Sure, if you can get me a tape by Friday."
So he manufactured the opportunity first.
He created the opportunity out of thin air. Then he immediately calls James Hetfield back.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say, "Hey, want to jam again?" He says, "I have a record deal. We have a spot on an album."
He leveraged a non-existent band to get a slot on a record and then used the slot on the record to create the band.
That's the genius of Lars. It's brilliant. He creates the demand, and then he supplies it. He forced Hetfield's hand. James wanted to be on vinyl. That was the ultimate dream for any musician back then. So they got together, wrote Hit the Lights in a Frenzy, and recorded a shoddy demo.
And they needed a name. And this is another classic example of his tactical acquisition.
Oh, it's a great heist story. Just a brilliant, shameless move. Lars had a friend named Ron Quintana. Ron was a super fan, just like Lars, and he was starting a fanzine.
Oh, right.
He had a list of potential names written down on a piece of paper. He shows the list to Lars and asks for his opinion. "What do you think? I'm debating between Metal Mania and Metallica."
And Lars's eyes must have just lit up.
You can just imagine the light bulb going on. He knew instantly. Metallica is a perfect word. It sounds like a periodic element. It sounds heavy. It rolls off the tongue. But he plays it cool.
He doesn't let on.
No. He looks at Ron with a straight face and says, "You know what, Ron? Metal Mania is a much better name for a magazine. It's got that alliteration. It's catchy. You should definitely go with that."
And as soon as Ron leaves the room,
Lars writes Metallica on his own notebook. He just stole it. He claimed it for his non-existent band. But again, it shows his branding instinct. He knew Metal Mania was generic and cheesy. Metallica was iconic. He saw the future in that word.
so the band is formed, they have the name, they have the attitude. Now we have to talk about the actual music. Because for all the talk about Lars being a businessman or a hustler, he is credited in our sources as a true pioneer of the thrash drumming sound.
Yeah, we have to give credit where it's due. In 1983, with the first album, Kill 'Em All, the drumming was frantic. It was based on that Motorhead punk rock energy. It's what we call the skank beat, snare on the upbeat, kick on the downbeat, played at like 200 beats per minute.
Tracks like Metal Militia are just physically exhausting to even listen to.
They are. It sounds like the kit is falling down a flight of stairs, but somehow perfectly in time. It's all forward momentum. He was constantly pushing the rest of the band to play faster, to be more aggressive.
But his technical peak, or at least his most complex, intricate era, was definitely the And Justice for All album in 1988.
Without a doubt.
The song One. We have to talk about the machine gun part.
It is the defining moment of air drumming history.
Mm.
I think every kid who ever picked up a pair of sticks has tried to play that part, that middle section, the breakdown. The guitars are doing this staccato chugging riff, and Lars matches it perfectly note for note with the double bass drums. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat.
It's not just keeping time at that point.
No, the drums become a melodic instrument. They're a lead instrument. They were mimicking the rhythm guitar in a way that very few drummers had done before in metal. It was a rhythmic and compositional statement.
And Dyer's Eve from that same album?
Dyer's Eve is barely playable. It is so fast, so relentlessly complex. For years, people rumored that they used studio trickery to loop the drum track because it was physically impossible for a human to play that clean, that fast, for that long.
Has he proven he can do it live?
He has, but it's an athletic feat. You can see the strain. It's an Olympian-level performance to get through that song.
But then we hit the 90s, the Black Album. And suddenly, the drumming completely changes. It gets, well, simple.
And this was a very conscious choice, and a very controversial one among the hardcore fans. Lars realized that if they wanted to get bigger, if they wanted to play stadiums, not just theaters, they needed groove.
You can't headbang to 200 BPM thrash.
You can, but a stadium full of 80,000 people can't. It's too fast. You need something people can feel in their chest. So he slowed it all down. He started looking at drummers, like AC/DC's Phil Rudd. He looked at Charlie Watts from the Rolling Stones, masters of the pocket.
Enter Sandman is a very, very simple drum beat.
It is kick, snare, kick, snare. That's it. But it hits you like a 10-ton hammer. It leaves so much space for the vocal and that iconic riff to breathe. This is where he matures as a songwriter. He realized that the drums are there to serve the song, not to show off his own chops.
The song comes first.
The song is king. And that philosophy sold 30 million albums, so it's hard to argue with it.
And he even scaled down his kit, right? I remember the Justice Tour. He was surrounded by this absolute fortress of white Tama drums.
Oh, it was a monster. The 80s kit was the white Tama beast. 4 rack toms up high, 2 floor toms, huge cymbals everywhere. In the 90s, for the Black Album tour, he stripped it way down to a 7-piece kit. 1 rack tom up top, 2 floors.
Yeah.
He wanted to force himself to be more creative with less.
But our research notes pointed out a really fascinating detail in the gear section, something I never noticed despite listening to these guys for decades. The ride cymbal.
It's the Where's Waldo of the Metallica drum kit.
Because it's not there.
It's not there. And for the non-drummers listening, you have to understand how weird that is.
Explain it. A standard drum kit has what?
Okay, so a standard drum beat, the pulse of the song, usually relies on one of 2 things. Either the hi-hat, which is the 2 cymbals that open and close with the pedal, or the ride cymbal, the big heavy one on the side that goes ding, ding, ding.
You use the hi-hat for verses maybe, and then switch to the ride for the chorus to make it bigger.
Exactly. The ride opens up the sound, creates a wash of sustain, and lifts the energy. It's drumming 101.
But Lars hates the thing.
He detests it. He thinks the ping of a ride cymbal has too much of a defined pitch, and it cuts through the frequency in a way that distracts from James's guitar tone. So instead, for his big, loud sections, he uses a China cymbal.
That's the one that looks like it's turned inside out.
Yeah, it looks like a trash can lid. It makes this trashy, explosive K-A-H sound. It has no sustain. It's just a burst of white noise, and then it dies. It's pure aggression.
His wash is just noise.
It's a wall of white noise. It fills the sonic spectrum without having a specific musical pitch. It's actually a huge part of why Metallica sounds so aggressive and powerful. If you put a sweet-sounding jazz ride cymbal on Master of Puppets, it would sound ridiculous.
But the notes say there is one exception on the current tour.
Yes. On the M72 World Tour, they play a song called Until It Sleeps from the Load album. That song has a very specific laid-back groove that needs a ride cymbal to sound right.
So what does he do?
It's hilarious. His drum tech, in the dark between songs, runs out on stage, screws a ride cymbal onto a stand, and puts it in front of him. Lars plays the one song, and then as soon as it's over, the tech runs back out and takes it away immediately.
It's like a specialized surgical tool. Hand me the ride. Okay, surgery's over. Take it away.
It just shows his absolute commitment to his sonic philosophy. He will not compromise, even if it means having a guy run on stage every single night for 1 3-minute section.
It's incredible. Okay, we've established the musician, the innovator. Now we need to move to what is, for many, the darkest chapter in the public relations history of the band. The year is 2000. The word on everyone's lips is Napster.
This is the moment where Lars Ulrich went from being the cool, energetic, talkative drummer to being the greedy rock star in the eyes of millions of people.
Let's look at the facts, because the narrative has gotten very muddy over 25 years. How did this actually start? It wasn't just that people were sharing their old albums for free.
No, that had been going on with tape trading for years. The trigger was a specific song. Metallica was recording a track called I Disappear for the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack. It was still a work in progress, a demo. It hadn't been mastered. It hadn't been released.
And it shows up on the radio.
He hears it on a major radio station. And he's thinking, how is this possible? The tapes are locked in our studio. It's a huge violation of their creative process. They trace the source, and they find this new, strange piece of software called Napster. They log on, and not only do they find I Disappear, they find their entire studio catalog available for free.
So Lars decided to go to war.
He went nuclear. He and the band filed a lawsuit for copyright infringement and racketeering, but he made a massive tactical error in how he handled the public relations. He didn't just let the lawyers send a cease and desist letter. He decided to make a spectacle of it.
The delivery of the names.
This is the image that burned him for a decade. He hired a consulting firm to track down the IP addresses of every Napster user who had shared a Metallica song. They compiled a list of over 300,000 usernames, essentially 300,000 of his own fans, and he printed out this enormous stack of paper.
It was the thousands of pages.
Thousands! And he physically delivered this stack of paper to Napster's office with news cameras rolling. He was captured on camera looking smug, handing over this list and saying, ban these people from your service.
It looked like he was suing his own audience. The optics were just terrible.
They were catastrophic. He looked like a narc. He looked like a multimillionaire trying to squeeze pennies out of college kids in their dorm rooms. And the internet, which was still a fairly new cultural force, turned on him instantly and viciously. There were flash animations of Lars the greedy pig. It was brutal.
And here's the deep dive nuance we need to bring. If we strip away the terrible PR and just look at the principle of the thing, was he wrong?
Legally, no. He was 100% correct. Ethically, that's the debate that still rages. But looking back from 2025, many artists now say Lars was the canary in the coal mine.
The only one with the guts to say something.
He was the only one brave enough, or maybe arrogant enough, to stand up and say, wait a minute, just because technology allows you to do this, that does not give you the right to steal our labor. He foresaw that if music became completely free, the economic model for artists would collapse. And for many, it did.
He testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee. I read the transcript of his testimony. He wasn't ranting and raving. He was actually very articulate about the concept of artist control.
He was. He made a great point. He said it wasn't about the money. It was about the choice. It is our music, and we should be the ones to decide when and how it is distributed to the public. That's a very valid artistic stance. But because he was already a millionaire living in a mansion, nobody wanted to hear it from him.
It's interesting that while he was fighting this big digital war, he tried to start his own business in the traditional industry, too, the music company.
A very literal name for a record label.
Very Lars. No frills.
He started it in 1998 with an accountant, Tim Duffy. The idea was that he would use his clout to sign and develop bands he liked. But it folded in 2002. It just never took off. Which goes to show that just because you're a genius at running the biggest band in the world, that doesn't mean you know how to run a label. It was a failure.
Which brings us to the other side of Lars. The side that isn't fighting with teenagers on the internet or testifying before Congress. Section 5 of our research, the Renaissance man. Because if you think this guy goes home after a show and just drinks beer and watches football, you are completely wrong.
He is a deeply cultured, deeply curious individual. And this goes right back to that childhood in Denmark. He has always been a passionate art collector. And we're not talking about posters. We're talking about serious, blue-chip, fine art.
The Basquiat story is the headline here. It's unbelievable.
Jean-Michel Basquiat, the legendary New York neo-expressionist artist from the 80s. Lars owned a major painting of his called Self-Portrait from 1982. He bought it way before the Basquiat market completely exploded. In 2002, he decided to sell it at Christie's auction house.
And the numbers are just staggering.
The pre-sale estimate was around $5 million, which is already a huge amount of money, the hammer price. It sold for over $13.5 million. It tripled the estimate.
So what does that tell us about him? It's not just a rich guy buying things he likes.
It tells us he has an eye, a real one. He understands value. He understands cultural trends. He sees things before other people do. He treats art with the same intensity and research that he treats his band. It shatters that stereotype of the dumb drummer.
Yeah.
He is a sophisticated operator.
And he's dabbled in acting, real acting, not just music videos.
Yes. He had a legitimate role in the HBO film Hemingway and Gellhorn in 2012. If you played Joris Ivens, a Dutch filmmaker, this wasn't a cameo where he plays a rock star. It was a period piece. He had lines. He had a character arc. He had to act alongside Nicole Kidman and Clive Owen.
Then he was okay?
The reviews were actually pretty decent. He has a presence. He's not just a musician trying to act. He held his own.
There's also the documentary Mission to Lars. This one creates a really different picture of him. I found it very touching when I watched it.
It's a film that completely changes your perception of him. It's made by Kate and William Spicer about their brother, Tom. Tom has Fragile X syndrome, which is a genetic condition that causes developmental issues. And Tom's one obsession in life is Lars Ulrich.
Lars is his holy grail.
Exactly. The entire movie is this chaotic, funny, and sometimes heartbreaking road trip trying to get Tom to meet Lars during a Metallica tour. And you spend the whole movie dreading the meeting, expecting the rock star to be distant or rude or for it to be a disappointment.
That's not.
It's the opposite. When they finally meet, Lars is incredibly gentle. He gets down on Tom's level. He spends real time with him. He connects with him on a human level. It shows a very deep, empathetic side that gets completely lost in the Napster villain narrative.
And then, the ultimate validation. The boy who left Denmark in disgrace after failing at tennis comes home as a national hero. He was knighted.
By the Queen of Denmark herself. Queen Margrethe II awarded him the Knight's Cross of the Order of the Dannebrog in 2017.
So does that mean we have to call him Sir Lars Ulrich?
In Denmark, the title is Ritter. Yeah. But yes, essentially. He's a member of the Danish chivalric order. It's a huge, huge honor. It's the country officially acknowledging that he has brought honor to Denmark on the global stage.
And he never gave up his passport, right? He's lived in the States for decades.
Correct. He's lived in the USA for over 40 years. His kids were born there. He pays taxes there. But he never became a U.S. citizen. He remains Danish. He holds on to that identity very tightly.
I want to touch on the physical cost of all this. We talked about the drumming, the speed, the volume, the intensity. You can't do that for 40 years without some kind of damage.
Tinnitus, the constant ringing in the ears. Lars has been very open about this since around 2009. He suffers from it constantly.
In the early days of Metallica, nobody wore earplugs. That wasn't cool. They stood in front of massive walls of speakers every night. He said he'd go to sleep after a show and just hear a high-pitched television test tone in his head.
That's a special kind of nightmare.
It's a cautionary tale for every young musician out there. Now, he's incredibly strict about ear protection, but the damage is already done. It doesn't go away.
Which brings us to his relaxation habits. If you have ringing ears and you play some of the loudest music on earth for a living, what do you possibly listen to on the tour bus to unwind?
Jazz. He goes right back to the start, right back to his godfather. He listens to Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and of course, Dexter Gordon. He says he needs the space in the music. He needs the improvisation. He describes metal as being about structure and aggression, while jazz is about freedom and flow. It's the yin to his yang. It balances him out.
Let's round out the personal side before we wrap up. Relationships. He's been married a few times, 3 marriages. He was married to Debbie Jones, a British woman he met on tour back in the late 80s. That marriage ended during the Pressure Cooker sessions for the Black Album. Then he was married for a number of years to Skylar Satenstein, an ER doctor, which is a really interesting match for a rock star.
An ER doctor probably has the right temperament for it.
I imagine so. Nothing would faze her. They had 2 sons, Miles and Lane. Then he was in a long-term relationship with Connie Nielsen, the actress from Gladiator. They were a kind of Danish power couple for a long time and have a son together. And currently, he's married to Jessica Miller, a fashion model.
And his sons, Miles and Lane, are musicians too.
They are. They have a band called Taipei Houston. It's a 2-piece, just drums and bass. And they're actually really interesting, very noisy garage rock kind of punk stuff. They aren't trying to be Metallica Jr., but you can see the influence. Lars is apparently a very supportive, if predictably intense dad. He goes to their shows and gives them notes.
Of course he does. The snare needs to be louder in the mix, son.
Cut the ride cymbal, Miles. What are you doing with that thing?
I also saw a note in the research about his friendship with Noel Gallagher from Oasis. That seems like an odd pairing on the surface.
It does, but when you think about it, it makes sense. They're both opinionated, incredibly talkative, strategic leaders of massive, world-conquering bands. They're the architects. And there's a great story that Noel Gallagher actually inspired Lars to quit cocaine.
Really? How so?
Yeah, this was in the mid-2000s. Lars was, dabbling, as many rock stars did. He read an interview where Noel Gallagher talked about quitting drugs cold turkey because he felt he wanted to be creative and sharp, not just another wasted rock casualty. And Lars said it just clicked for him. He thought, If Noel can do it, I can do it. He stopped all the recreational stuff to focus on the work and his family.
That's the discipline again, the tennis player mindset coming right back around.
It's always there. Underneath everything, he's still that kid training on the court.
So let's zoom out. We've covered the Gentofte upbringing, the Deep Purple epiphany, the spectacular tennis failure, the garage days, the global domination, the lawsuits, the art collection, the knighthood. When you look at Lars Ulrich as a complete picture, what is the ultimate takeaway?
I think the takeaway is about the power of the pivot. Lars Ulrich is a man who absolutely refuses to be defined by his limitations or his failures. He wasn't the best tennis player in California, so he quit and decided to become the biggest drummer in the world. He wasn't the most technical drummer, so he became the best arranger and band leader in his genre. He wasn't a lawyer, but he took on the entire internet and, in a way, predicted the future of the music industry.
He seems to have this incredible, almost unnerving ability to just decide who he is and then will that identity into existence until the world eventually catches up and agrees with him.
That's it perfectly. He has this unwavering, borderline arrogant self-belief. Even when he's wrong, he commits to it so fully that he bends reality to his will. And that energy is what drove Metallica. James Hetfield is the soul of the band. He's the riff, the voice, the raw talent. But Lars is the battery. He is the engine. He's the one who answers the phone, who picks the flight, who picks the fight, who steals the band name.
Without Lars, James Hetfield is just a guy with a great voice playing amazing guitar riffs in a garage somewhere.
Exactly. With Lars, he's a stadium god. It took that combination of soul and will to make it happen.
And it all hinges on that one moment, that one failure at Corona Del Mar High School.
The failure that made everything possible.
He didn't make the team.
And thank God for all of us that he didn't.
That is the final thought I want to leave you with. We spend so much of our lives fearing failure. We think if we don't make the team or get the job or get into the school we wanted, that our life is over. But for Lars Ulrich, the failure was the single best thing that ever happened to him. It was a redirection.
It forced him onto the path he was always meant to be on. So if you're listening right now and you just hit a wall, maybe you didn't make the cut for something you desperately wanted, just remember Lars. Put down the racket, pick up the sticks. You might be about to start the biggest metal band in history.
Or at the very least, you might really annoy your neighbor.
That too. A noble cause in itself.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive on the beat behind the beast. Go listen to the isolated drum track of One. Look up that Basquiat painting he sold and appreciate the strange, contradictory, fascinating life of Sir Lars. We'll see you next time.